Well, I love being here. I just recognize that because for a while, I was sitting back there in the corner and just realizing how much I think I said this last week, how much I love making these kind of returns in my life, where life comes full circle and I'm able to remember the gift of that has been given to me, being a part of the birth of Columbine Unity. And I get to come back and revisit this experience of birth. And today it seems like that I'm continuing to give birth to this notion of what is prayer. Now, yes, the title of what I'm going to be speaking about here is The Mystery of Prayer Revealed. I'm not sure I'm going to reveal anything here today that you don't already know, but let's see what happens. So I'm going to just pose the question to you, which seems relevant here, and that is the question of what is prayer, which is the cornerstone of unity. What is it? What is prayer? Anyone? Communication with God. Yes. Yes, anyone?
Focused awareness.
Focused awareness. Amen to that. Anyone else? What is prayer?
Generating and sending love.
Generating and sending love. Woo! Wow. Vulnerability. Yes. What is prayer?
Energy moving within me.
Energy moving within you.
Reconnecting to source.
Reconnecting to source. You know, we could just do this for another 20 minutes, right? Then I could go peacefully sit down and all would be well. Anyone else? What is prayer?
Humility.
Say that again? Humility. My, oh my. This is being recorded, so you can go back and listen to this. What I've come to know in my life, because I've been involved in Unity since 1981, and in New Thought for longer than that, when it comes to prayer, what you may have experienced and I may have experienced and learned about prayer is very narrow and very limited. So hopefully I can expand your horizon of what prayer is for you in your life and open in some way a new door for you to go through in your relationship with your inner life. Now, in ancient Hebrew, prayer was associated with the word palal, P-A-L-A-L, which literally meant, and we all I think can relate to this, it meant to intervene or mediate. In other words, it was seen as a petition for an intervention or a mediation. Has anybody ever prayed for an intervention or mediation in your life? Of course you have. This is mostly what all of us learned about what prayer was when we were young. Now, this notion of prayer as a petition to God out there somewhere in the far corner of the universe, as Yogananda described it, came along about 4,000 years ago with Abraham, the old patriarch. And most of us, I think probably in this room, in some way grew up in mainstream Christianity in some form. If you did, raise your hand. Hallelujah. All right. Wow, that's just about, looks like about 80 or 90% of us. Now, I don't know about your experience growing up in mainstream Christianity. I grew up in Texas, in Fort Worth, in a very traditional Methodist church. And when the minister, the pastor they called him, would pray, he was behind a pulpit that literally was, 12 feet wide. A big wooden pulpit. He was standing behind the pulpit. And he would pray in the way that, as I imagined it, I had to sit next to my parents in row 2, right over here, starting when I was 5 years of age. And when I watched, because I watched and observed the pastor praying again to the God out there. And he was petitioning for this, and this. And I actually, as a small child, thought, this is somewhat strange, actually. Did you ever have that thought in the church you were growing up in? that this is something very strange is happening here. This is actually the method for communicating with the creator of the universe? And I had that question going on in me as a child. Did you ever have these questions growing up? When you were surrounded by these kinds of experiences of prayer? So I'm going to shift it for us here because as a child, my experience of prayer never made any sense to me whatsoever. And then once I left the church, literally the first year, and I was 20 years old, I was in my third year of college, and a very good friend of mine presented me for some reason, and I still don't know why that person was inspired to give me this book. But he gave me the book, The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. I didn't know who Khalil Gibran was, never seen the book. And when I opened it up to begin to read, then it came to the section about where the master teacher in the book is asked, what is prayer? And this is what Gibran wrote in answer. For what is prayer but the expansion of yourself into the living ether? Oh! That's literally the response I had. This was so completely different than what I had experienced, that I was describing, that a lot of us experienced growing up in traditional church. The expansion of yourself. Yeah! I want to know more about that. And that's the first time in my life, literally, that I was having a spiritual experience when I read that. I don't know about you. How does that come over you today when you hear that? Prayer is the expansion of yourself into the living ether. Hallelujah! Wow, what's wrong with me? What's going on here? So I'm going to share some other insights that are very heartfelt about what prayer is, that are not conventional. All right? This is from Saint Teresa of Avila, the 16th century Spanish mystic. She said, prayer is an intimate friendship, a frequent conversation held alone with the beloved. Just let that rest on your heart here for a moment. An intimate friendship, a frequent conversation held alone, and St. Teresa spent a lot of time alone with the beloved, with a capital B. Okay. Myrtle Fillmore, when she referred to prayer in her description, this is how she kind of responded. It is the God in the midst of us that frees and heals. This was Myrtle Fillmore's summary of what it is to pray. It's the God in the midst of us. She is praying and connecting with the God in her midst. And this is what actually frees us and heals us. Are you with me on that? You've come to unity that just so succinctly expresses what is prayer. Now, I've also come to know as one of my most beloved spiritual teachers, Eric Butterworth. How many here know of Eric Butterworth? Truly a beloved teacher in Unity for 50 years. And he was the longtime minister at Unity Church in New York City. And Eric expressed this prayer as the following. Now, hopefully you'll have ears to hear this. Prayer is not something we do to God, but to ourselves. It is not flattery, but a sense of oneness. It is not words, but feeling. I'm going to have more to say about that in a moment. It is not will, but willingness. And then he goes on to say, and it's not, I don't think it's on your screen here. Listen to this. It is what overtakes us when we let our whole being, and I love this, lean into the mystery and wonder of the infinite. all right, Eric, I'd be more than happy to lean into the mystery and wonder of the infinite. From this disposition, an inner corridor opens. And this infinite all invites us in to listen and receive. Okay. Thank you, Eric Butterworth. Hopefully you're taking this in and getting a sense of the inner depth of experience that you can have with prayer. Now, we know there's a long historical context, again, going back 4,000 years and much longer than that, where these interactions with the infinite all have been taking place around the globe by countless souls, again, for ages and ages and ages. So the reality is, we have our being right now in this space right here, in this rich field of prayer. Right here, right now. Now, we've attuned to prayer in so many locations, in so many ways, whether it's in nature or in buildings of wood and stone, and we've deeply communed with one another in these spaces and places, and with music and art and so forth and so on. Prayer and the presence of prayer is with us all the time, and especially in spaces and places like this. St. Francis of Assisi, when speaking of prayer, he specifically said this: there are beautiful and wild forces within us. This is what he was talking about. He was talking about prayer as this beautiful, and I don't want to demonstrate wild, but wild forces within us. And in ancient traditions, it's also believed that the most powerful force in the universe, the most powerful force in the universe, is the power of prayer. Now just take that in. The most powerful force in the universe. And I can tell you, when I was that 5-year-old child watching the pastor behind the big pulpit, I never imagined at all that this is what he was attempting to do, was to access this most powerful force in the universe, the power of prayer. I'm going to share a story here in a moment that you probably have heard of. I'm almost certain you have. And it comes from Greg Braden. In his book, The Secrets of the Lost Mode of Prayer, it's a little book, it's about this size. It's a treasure. The Secrets of the Lost Mode of Prayer. And Greg writes, and then I'm going to share a story that he shares in the book. He says, it has been said that prayer is a language of the, it's just not, again, I don't think it's on your screen, is it? Okay, good. It has been said that prayer is a language of the angels and God. Yeah. From the wisdom recorded in the Dead Sea Scrolls, this is going back several thousand years, to the native practices which have survived until today, prayer is universally described as a language with the power to change our bodies, Myrtle Fillmore, our lives, and the world. We find that ultimately prayer has no rules. I like being in environments in which there are no rules. How about you? Okay? Prayer has no rules and cannot be done in a right or wrong manner. So when I ask, well, what is prayer? We had some lovely, beautiful reflections on that. And so there is no right, wrong, good, or bad. Prayer is that expansive. It's that unlimited. Has no rules and it cannot be done in a right or wrong manner. It lives within us as something that comes naturally, feeling. Now I'm going to share a story that Greg shares in that little book, The Secrets of the Lost Mode of Prayer. Greg tells a story about his close friend David. David was a member of the local Navajo tribe in northern New Mexico. They were experiencing a severe drought. and I believe this was somewhere in the 1990s, in northern New Mexico, and they badly needed rain. So David calls up Greg and says, I'm going to make, you might say, a short pilgrimage to a sacred site. And it's about a 6-mile hike. Would you like to join me? And Greg said, sure, because Greg lived there in the area in and around northern New Mexico. So they set out on this long hike to the sacred site. Again, if you can imagine that part of New Mexico, if you've been there, this high sagebrush plateau. They're going there to pray. When they arrived, David, he very quickly prepared himself and sat quietly, took off his pack, removed several things from his pack, laid it out in front of him, and then he just sat very quietly while Greg watched. And then, not very long passed, according to Greg, something like 5 to 7 minutes. And David was finished, and he turned to Greg and said, I'm ready to return to the village. Quite surprised, Greg said, I thought we were here to pray for rain. No, he replied. I said that I would pray rain. If I had prayed for rain, it could never happen. Looking back at David, Greg asked, if you didn't pray for rain, then what did you do? Yeah, what did you do? He replied, it's simple. Now just take this in. This is David talking. I began to have the feeling of what rain feels like. I felt the feeling of rain on my body and what it feels like to stand with my naked feet in the mud of our village plaza because there has been so much rain. I smelled the smells of rain on the earthen walls in our village and felt what it feels like to walk through fields of corn chest high because there has been so much rain. Ah. Wow. And then David goes on to say, rather than giving thanks for what has been created, David told Greg that he felt grateful for the opportunity to participate in creation. Wow. Now, if you wanted to come up with a succinct definition of prayer, this is about it, for me, it's about as close as it comes. What is prayer? It is the opportunity to participate in creation. Are you with me on that? Yeah. Yes. So here's the follow-up to that. The rains came, and they came, and they came, and they came, and they came. There was so much rain that there was rivers of rain running through the Pueblo villages. Have you ever been to the Pueblo village there near Taos? There was floods coming down from the mountains. There was so much rain. And finally, Greg calls up David and asks, hey, David, now what's up with all this rain, okay? And David's response was something like this, well, the elders haven't quite figured out yet how to pray to address too much rain. Wow. What a powerful story. Hopefully you can listen to this again and take that in, all right? Prayer is something we do to ourselves. Maybe I've already said this. Prayer is not an intervention as much as it is a communion, a deep feeling, an inner creation ignited through the feelings and visions as I've said here before, of the heart. The feelings and visions of the heart. This is really at the heart of what prayer is. Now, just one other anecdote here from Greg Braden, bless his heart, scientist, geologist, computer scientist, and spiritual teacher. He comments on, because he used to take tour groups to the plateaus of Tibet, the mountaintop of the world, to visit Buddhist monasteries. And he goes on to say, preserved for centuries in the texts and traditions of those living upon the roof of the world, this lost mode of prayer, he described, has no words or outward expressions. No words or outward expressions. It is based solely in feeling. If you take nothing away from you other than that today, please, prayer, in its deepest, most profound, transformative experience, originates in deep feeling. Specifically, prayer invites us to feel as if our prayer has already been answered. I know you have heard that before. Have you not? How many have heard that before? Feel as if your prayer has already been answered. Yes. Now, specifically, rather than feeling powerless, this is often how prayer gets approached, right? We're in a desperate fix. So we're feeling the need and the call to pray in some way. And yet we're in this state, in this feeling state of something like desperation. So rather than feeling powerless and needing to ask for help from a higher source, this is the old patriarch Abraham, how he would have prayed. In recent years, studies have shown that this very quality of feeling actually speaks to the field that connects us, like right here in this room. There is a field of energy here that connects us. Spirit, God, name it what you will. But we are profoundly interconnected right here, right now. And so we're speaking into the field. I'm doing my best to do that right now, to speak into the field and have this experience be a prayer, and just to accentuate the power of our togetherness in feeling and experiencing the field that connects us. Okay. Again, through prayers of feeling, you will experience something unlike probably what you've done in the past, and especially if it's gratitude, appreciation, care, or compassion. These four have been shown scientifically to profoundly change our experience of being in the field in prayer. So in closing, I'm going to end with our elder brother and guide, Mahatma Gandhi. His words: "It is better in prayer to have a heart without words than words without heart. Prayer is not a flight of eloquence. It is no lip homage. It springs from the heart." I would ask you just to take a moment with me here to close your eyes. And allow your attention, wherever it may be, just to drop simply into your heart. It's very helpful if you choose just to place a hand there over your heart to really magnetize your attention there. And to remember, it has often been described, the heart has been described as the seat of God in you. And we're just going to take a moment to be present to our hearts together in this field of prayer. And I invite you to join me now, please. And especially feeling gratitude for this community, for the gift of prayer in your life. Thank you.